Welcome back to this second episode of our Bitcoin Masterclass. Now we're going to kick off straight from where we left the first episode, which is looking at Bitcoin data and how we can help use this to understand Bitcoin's market cycles, where it may be in a bull or a bear market, and try and give us some insights into the underlying sentiment and feeling across investors. Now, if you've ever invested in any shares or stocks or commodities like gold and silver, the number one thing you're probably looking at is the price. Now, you may look at the supply or inflation rate of gold or the number of shares issued or performance of a company, but you've never had the insights that Bitcoin provides. Like we mentioned in the first episode, Bitcoin allows us to see every single transaction that has ever occurred on the network, every single address, and we can monitor these and gain some insights with accuracy that we've never seen before. It practically gives us X-ray vision to the underlying health of the network. And what we can see just with this first chart is, given the supply and demand economics of Bitcoin, the demand and how it's grown from just a few pennies to well over $100,000 at its peak. Throughout the entire history of Bitcoin, through all the ups and downs, the number of days profitable holding Bitcoin is 94%, over 94%. So this is still an incredibly profitable asset. Even if you read headlines of Bitcoin having died another death and having decreased X amount of percentages or dollars, this is still a very small asset. We're still in our infancy. What we need to acknowledge is Bitcoin is growing rapidly in its adoption. If we look at the addresses holding X amount of Bitcoin per year, so for example, this top one here, the number of addresses holding 1/100th of a Bitcoin, 0.01 Bitcoin. Like I said, you don't have to hold an entire full 1 Bitcoin. You can hold up to 100 millionth of a Bitcoin called a Satoshi. So once we aggregate all of these, so 1/100th of a Bitcoin would be 1 million Satoshis. We can see that just going back a few years to say 2016, a decade ago, only 3.8 million unique addresses holding 1 million Satoshis, whereas today that's grown by nearly 10 million. Bitcoin is growing at a very rapid rate, and we do have ups and downs. As anything, Bitcoin is cyclical. During bear markets, when the price is deteriorating and decreasing, we may see less people holding Bitcoin, but during the bull markets, when lots of people are interested, more and more adoption is occurring. We can see even those holding 1 full Bitcoin, a whole coiner, and keep in mind, there can never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. There's more millionaires in the world than there are Bitcoin available. So this is a very high achievement if you can ever accumulate at least a whole Bitcoin. But again, looking back in 2016, we had around 550,000. And in our previous bull cycle, this peaked at over 1 million. So this is a very, very desirable asset that is being adopted like nothing else. Now, what we can do is if we take both of these data points into consideration, not only the amount of days that Bitcoin has been profitable, but looking at the underlying price at which they accumulated Bitcoin at. Like I said, because of the on-chain data that we can see, we can analyze this open ledger, this blockchain, all of the transactions happening on Bitcoin. We can see the price at which each participant actually bought Bitcoin at when they last transacted it into their wallet. And we can see, even though Bitcoin has had these cyclical moments where Bitcoin's price has dropped from, say, $20,000 to around $3,000 or nearly $70,000 down to $15,000, we can see that the general trend of percentage of addresses in profit is going very much to the upside. So it's still a very, very desirable and profitable asset to hold if that's what you're focusing on and not just using it as a currency. But like I said, we can actually look at the accumulation price of each individual wallet, each individual holder of Bitcoin. Now, what we can do is look at probably the number one, the most popular on-chain data point that we're actually deriving a lot of different metrics from and taking a lot of inspiration from. Now, this is the realized price. If you have to understand just one metric for Bitcoin on-chain data, make it the realized price. Because what we can do is if we look at the average accumulation price of all Bitcoin networks, the cost basis for every single holder, and aggregate all of that together, it gives us this realized price. So essentially, as Bitcoin crossed $100,000, the average person had paid around $40,000 to $50,000 for their Bitcoin. Now, obviously, there'll be some that paid considerably more than this. They were buying as Bitcoin was maybe passing $100,000, but we have to take into consideration that there were people accumulating Bitcoin all the way back here when we were still just a few dollars. And what we can see is when Bitcoin dips beneath this realized price, this indicates that the average Bitcoin investor is actually at a loss on their position. And historically, these have been unbelievable areas to accumulate some cheap Bitcoin. Now what we can do is take this one step further, because if we just divide the price by this realized price, we get the market value to realized value ratio, or the MVRV. Now, as I said, the realized price is probably one of the most popular metrics in on-chain data analysis, because from it we can derive so many other pieces of information. So what we can do is, if we look at the ratio between these, again, we get this red line here, which is the MVRV. Now on bitcoinmagazinepro.com, what you can do is, on any of the charts, scroll down to understand these metrics a little bit better. Today I'll be covering a few of the most important metrics to take into consideration with your analysis, just to gain some insight onto the Bitcoin network, the Bitcoin price cycles that we see. But again, a lot of them have chart explainers which go very much in depth into the calculations, and if at any point you need a little refresher, just scroll beneath the chart and it gives you all of the understandings you'll ever need. But what we can do is, again, take this one step further, rather than just looking at the raw ratio, because we have to acknowledge Bitcoin is an asset that's gone from a market cap of just a few $1,000s to into the trillions of dollars. So the amount of capital actually required to move Bitcoin's price is increasing rapidly, especially as we're getting some of the biggest institutions in the world now accumulating Bitcoin. The market may be moving a little bit slower than it did before. So what we can do, rather than just looking at this raw ratio, which as we can see has been trending to the downside over the past few years, if we actually standardize this data, if we look at the standard deviation within this, essentially how much this is moving, how much the Bitcoin price is volatile to the upside or the downside, and standardize this ratio into a Z-score, we get the MVRV Z-score. Now what this does is provide very clear and obvious accumulation zones, which is when it's in the green area down here, and distribution zones, when you should maybe considering taking profit on your position if that's what you're wanting to do, or maybe just a time where you maybe consider scaling back on your dollar cost averaging and accumulation of Bitcoin. This is when you're seeing news headlines about Bitcoin making new millionaires, when you're seeing orange Lamborghinis down the street, when everyone's going crazy, all the singers are making songs about it. This is usually when the market is getting a little bit overheated. Now when we're down here in the green zone, it's when we're beneath this realized price. On this chart it says realized cap because we're just multiplying by the circulating supply, but once we're beneath this, as I said, this is when it's the most opportune moments to be accumulating Bitcoin. One thing you'll notice from looking at on-chain data pieces like this is it's really just mass psychology quantified. We're putting into numbers the underlying sentiment and feeling of investors across the network. When everyone's very euphoric, when everyone's incredibly bullish, it's usually a time to actually be a contrarian and do the opposite. Now, it's very difficult to do this when you're just looking at your investments go up incredibly fast in terms of their valuations, and you're making huge amounts of profit and you're telling everyone that they should have bought Bitcoin when you did. But realistically, when you can focus on data points like these, it removes the biases, it removes the emotions, and it makes the decision-making process a whole lot simpler. Next, if we look at the Bitcoin HODL waves, what this is doing is looking at the amount of Bitcoin being held by different age bands. Now, that might sound confusing, but what I'll do just to simplify it, if I remove a few of these, so we're just looking at everything from 1 year up, what this is showing us is the percentage of all Bitcoin in circulation that is being held in wallets that have held that Bitcoin for at least 1 year. Now, what this does is it gives us some insight into the amount of conviction that long-term holders have. If they've been holding Bitcoin for at least a year, they probably have a lot of belief. They're not just in it for a quick buck to make a little bit of profit here and there. So what we can see is during the tail end of bear markets, this usually increases quite significantly, because you'll get a lot of people who bought Bitcoin and are now holding it into the next cycle, but you get a lot of people that are holding it because they don't want to sell. During these periods of time, these long-term or experienced participants probably have a better understanding of looking at the Bitcoin price and seeing that we're at a discount and seeing that we're undervalued. Whereas when Bitcoin's price is rapidly increasing, this is usually when this HODL wave decreases, because we're not seeing a huge amount of conviction to hold indefinitely, because usually they've held from down here when Bitcoin was a few $100s to $20,000. And, you know, if you've held for that long, maybe you deserve a little bit of profit. Maybe you deserve to cash out and buy a nice new car or whatever it is you want. And same is true in every single cycle we've seen. As this decreases, it indicates that long-term holders are selling their Bitcoin. And again, it's supply and demand economics. If we see more and more Bitcoin hitting the open market, then it's going to struggle to go up indefinitely. If we, for example, add the, say, new market participants, say 3 months and below onto onto the chart, what we can see is this really helps visualize FOMO, fear of missing out, because this is when Bitcoin is making the news, making the headlines, and this is when new people are rushing into Bitcoin. What we typically see is this actually peaks as the Bitcoin price action is peaking, because you see these people rushing in. They don't want to miss out on the profit. They're seeing everyone else make money. And every time this spikes rapidly to the upside, it usually indicates that the market may be getting a little bit overheated. Now, what we can do is, again, look at two more metrics. This next one is the spend output profit ratio. Now, this is one of the more complicated metrics we actually have on our platform. But what this is doing is looking at the average price someone accumulated their Bitcoin at, looking at what price it entered their wallet, and then we take the difference between the price when it exited their wallet. Now, as I said, I didn't want to get too technical with this series by going in depth into all the complexities and intricacies of the Bitcoin technology, but what we're looking at is UTXOs, which is the unspent transaction output. But all you need to know is we're looking at the US dollar value when Bitcoin entered a wallet and the US dollar value when that Bitcoin was spent, when this UTXO was spent. So once we aggregate all of this Bitcoin movement from all addresses on the network, what we can do is see if the average person is selling Bitcoin potentially at a loss when this SOPR, this spent output profit ratio, is beneath a valuation of 0. And again, like we can see, people are usually capitulating. We usually see the most Bitcoin sold at a loss right at the most opportune moments to buy. This is why focusing on this on-chain data far outperforms and simplifies the process of trying to time your Bitcoin accumulation and distribution. Whereas when we're seeing a huge amount of Bitcoin being sold for a profit, especially alongside a lot of distribution from these longer term holders, this gives us some insight that maybe the market's getting a little bit overheated because there can't be an indefinite amount of new capital flowing into Bitcoin. So we're seeing lots of long-term holders selling, and they're selling at a vast amount of profit. Again, usually this gives us some indication that the market may be getting a little heated. Now, what we can also do is take this one step further, because if we look at the coin days destroyed, which is the last metric we'll discuss today, I don't want to overwhelm you with all of the different data points that you can take into consideration, but the coin days destroyed is probably one of my favorite metrics. Now, again, this is probably one of the more complex ones to take into consideration, but if you imagine you held one Bitcoin and you held that Bitcoin for 100 days and then transferred it, you would add 100 coin days destroyed. Now, that should be fairly simple to grasp, and for example, if you held 0.1 Bitcoin and wanted to add the same 100 coin days destroyed, then you'd need to hold for 1,000 days. Now, what this does is it weights the amount of Bitcoin being moved on the network by the amount of time it's been held. Now, this is an incredibly useful insight and incredibly important metric to take into consideration, because when a huge amount of Bitcoin is being moved and it's Bitcoin that's been held for an incredibly long period of time, it gives us some good insight that maybe a lot of these long-term holders who are maybe realizing some profit, who are maybe distributing from the HODL waves, are starting to sell considerable amounts of Bitcoin. And as we can see from something like the HODL waves, we usually get some insight into their level of expertise by the amount of time they've been holding. They usually have some experience. They usually know the market cycles a little bit better than the average, or especially the new investor. So when we see a huge velocity of movement on chain from these old wallets, as we can see, this usually coincides with spikes as Bitcoin's price is topping out. But just because they're long-term holders doesn't mean they're not susceptible to capitulation and these extreme periods of fear, because we can see even as Bitcoin's bottoming out, we usually get big events of lots of people moving their Bitcoin, lots of people capitulating and giving up. Bitcoin has died another death and they too scared to continue holding it. The coin days destroyed is amazing at outlining turning points in the Bitcoin price action. So I know I've covered a lot of data today. I know it may be a little bit overwhelming to take all of this into account, but we'll go more in depth in the upcoming masterclass series. But if there's anything that you take from this episode, it's that Bitcoin's data allows us to track activity and underlying sentiment on chain like no other asset. Bitcoin is truly unique in this. It gives us an edge, it gives us an advantage. Suddenly we don't need hundreds or thousands of Wall Street analysts and people on TV telling us what to do with our money, telling us the underlying feelings and sentiment, or the amount of commodities or the cash that they've got in reserves for companies or shares or mining stocks, whatever that may be. With Bitcoin, this is totally open and free for anyone. If you don't want to use Bitcoin Magazine Pro, which I'm a little bit biased, of course, I think you should, you can spin up a node yourself. You can look at the Bitcoin network on your own and do this type of analysis. Bitcoin is open source. You can use it in any way you like, but we're just trying to aggregate this process, save you some time, keep the process very, very simple. All of the charts I've outlined today are completely 100% free for everyone to use. So I definitely recommend checking them all out, having a play around, and trying to just get to grips with the fact that Bitcoin is a technology and is an asset and a money that we've never seen before. And the data available around it is giving us insights available in no other asset class. As always, thank you all very much for watching, and hopefully I can see you in the next episode of this Bitcoin Masterclass series.